Story 1. I am a wedding photographer. They said they were influencers with a large following and that they would promote me, but when I asked for their online handle, there was silence. I know this is a lot. I am fairly well known, so I am an easy target. Exposure. People die from exposure. Story 2. I have been a wedding photographer for 12 years. I routinely get asked to photograph entire weddings for free, not always by Instagram influencers. One time a man I did not like much asked me to photograph a wedding for free for his friend, someone I did not know existed until that interaction. I imagine walking into a restaurant and asking for their absolute best meal for free, then telling them it will be good for their business to do so. Story 3. I had a client ask me to Photoshop his head onto another man's body because he preferred the other man's shirt to his own. I did it because it was hilarious and he paid me for it. Story 4. Someone asked me to shoot video of their new house being built. They offered $200 but wanted me to go every weekend for 2 years to build a time-lapse. I definitely said no. Story 5. A bald man asked me to Photoshop veins onto his head to make it look like a giant penis. He was a businessman selling an audiobook. Story 6. Someone asked me to do a week of videography and create a promotional video for $200. Not per day, but for the entire week. Story 7. I am not a photographer, but I sell rocks, including crystals, obelisks, and palm stones, to fund a small animal sanctuary. I have been asked by a few people to borrow my inventory to use in photo shoots. None of them offered to pay. They wanted me to lug 1,000 pounds of rocks to their location and set them up out of the kindness of my heart. I would have charged $50 or $100 for an entire day's shoot, to be honest. Story 8. An influencer asked me to shoot, and before I could give her my prices, she gave me hers. More than $300 for me to shoot with her for 30 minutes. One of her main selling points was that she could teach me how to leverage and grow my social media. She was 15. She was asking me to pay her when she should at minimum have been paying me. I do not even charge that much. Story 9. A girl contacted me to do a suicide girls photo shoot. I gave her my rates. She replied that she did not have that much and asked, "Is it not enough for you to see my breasts?" Story 10. As a photo assistant in Chicago, a friend told me a popular New York photographer was looking for an assistant on Instagram for a shoot in Chicago. I inquired with the gentleman, and he said he only had a day rate of $150. He also said the day would be 14 hours and asked me to pick up his equipment rental, which included a 12-foot sweep, and store it at my place to be ready for the shoot the next day. Now, $150 for 17 hours of work? I don't care which photographer you are. Pay your assistants correctly. Story 11. Beet poop. Some influencer was promoting betaine in beets as part of a healthy diet. She wanted me to take pictures of the color-changing stool, saying this is normal for people who cannot process betaine. That week, my digital single-lens reflex camera was dropped and is now unusable. It was a bad week. Story 12. An influencer tried to set up a shoot with me. When I mentioned my price, she was shocked because she assumed I would pay her. Story 13. A few years ago, I was in Acadia National Park and hiked the Beehive Trail. For those unfamiliar, it is about as close to rock climbing as you can get without a harness. You climb straight up a cliff using iron rungs, so it is very fun and you are rewarded with an amazing view at the top. Most people take a quick photo at the edge, then move on to the rockier area with a less impressive view to rest. While we were resting, 2 women stopped at the top and took over the best view at the edge to do various yoga poses. Families kept coming up and asking if they could take a picture. But the women said, "We were here first and we will be here a while," when asked if they were almost done. They occupied the spot for at least 10 minutes. We left before they were finished, but it still makes my blood boil to think about it. Story 14. Professional here. This is not really outrageous in terms of what they wanted to do in a photo, but I would say 90% of influencers who contact me try to use tagging as their form of payment. Well, I have 100,000 followers, so you're guaranteed to get so much work from this you'd be an idiot to say no. This is verbatim what one woman said to me when I politely informed her of my rates. Paying artists in exposure is nothing new, but the level of entitlement I am seeing these days is off the charts. The only thing I can ever guarantee from these interactions is that they will throw a massive tantrum when I say no, complete with some classic posts from the Reddit community called Nice Girls, such as, "Your work isn't even that good. I was trying to do you a favor," and so on. One person contacted me saying that she gets paid a specific amount from companies per post, and therefore every post she makes using my photographs should count for that same amount of money paid to me, because like so many people will see it, you will pretty much be famous. Edit to answer some common responses. Yes, I do my best to explain how the process actually works, that exposure is not a form of payment, and so on. This has varying degrees of success, but a lot of the time they end up paying my rates anyway and say something like, "Never know if you don't ask," right? Laughing out loud. No, I do not ever respond with sarcastic or snarky comments. You never know when someone will go off the rails and start bad-mouthing you on their platform. Screenshots are a thing, and word of mouth is a huge part of getting new clients. Yes, it would be immensely satisfying to confront some of these people, but an out-of-context screenshot with some victim story behind it can be extremely damaging, so it is always better to err on the side of caution. I honestly appreciate all the suggestions for counteroffers and ways of dealing with these people. There are some seriously smart answers out there. I do not let anyone take advantage of me or my business, and managing client expectations is just part of the job. Cheers for all the awesome responses. This was a lot of fun. Story 15. Someone asked me to shoot her entire wedding day, an underwater engagement session, and some honeymoon shots, all for exposure. I politely said no. She reacted patronizingly, asking if I knew who she was and what it would do for my career. She had about 10,000 fewer followers than I did, and I had already pointed out that I do not do weddings, so it would not have been in my interest even if she had millions of followers. An influencer asked me to do a nude photo shoot for free. I declined and wished him luck. He then sent an explicit photo of his genitals. I reported him. Story 16. I was in New York once when a young woman, who looked to be in her 20s, approached me and asked me to take her photo. I thought it would be a routine request, but I set aside my pride and lowered the camera to get an architectural perspective. When I looked up, she was standing in the middle of the road, one hand on a car she must have stopped because traffic was moving, and the other holding a banner that said life. To this day, I have no idea what I witnessed. Story 17. She asked for $200 per hour with a 3-hour minimum, despite lacking prior modeling experience, and required that the photos not be posted anywhere and be sold exclusively on her Patreon. Story 18. I have a long gray and white beard that naturally prompts a lot of jokes about looking like Santa Claus. We spent Christmas in Punta Cana this year, and I have an old Hawaiian shirt with reindeer and Christmas decorations on it. On the afternoon of Christmas Day, I walked down the beach in my Christmas shirt and was immediately surrounded by girls in bikinis who wanted to take selfies with Santa Claus. I agreed. It seemed like good fun, and if a group of giggling girls wanted to sit on my lap and take a picture, who was I to complain? But it became obnoxious quickly. Each of them wanted 20 shots from different angles in different poses with different backgrounds and lighting. I could not figure out what was going on until one of them mentioned how popular this would be on Instagram and said she had found out what Santa does to rest after Christmas Eve. After that, it became irritating, so I refused to take any more photos unless a child asked. That upset the Instagram group and made the situation worse. I ended up avoiding the beach and pool area for the rest of the week. Story 19. My friend, whom we'll call Sarah, is a successful photographer despite being only a college student. About a month ago, Sarah and I met for lunch at our university's food court. She was fiddling with her cameras, prepping them for a big shoot that night, when a very attractive woman walked over and started chatting with us. After a few minutes of casual conversation, mostly about Sarah's cameras, the woman asked if Sarah would be interested in doing a shoot. She pitched a concept that involved modeling very risque outfits in the mountains just outside the city, and then taking some photos in the center of downtown. Overall, the idea bordered on pornographic. Sarah told her typical rates and said that because of the nature of the shoot, she would have to charge extra, as it was not something she normally did or felt comfortable with. The woman's face changed from enthusiastic to, "Are you kidding me?" She then butted in and said, "I have over 85,000 Instagram followers. Do you know the kind of exposure working with me would give you? This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for you. Sarah responded that she was an in-house photographer for 3 of the city's largest concert venues, worked for the newspaper, and was a highly recommended wedding photographer. "I don't work for free," she said. "My favorite line was, 'I work with people much more famous than you on an almost daily basis. I've shot photos for Marilyn Manson, Motley Crue, Shania Twain, Post Malone, and many other musicians, and I was paid for all of it. Your exposure isn't worth anything to me.'" After that, the woman got very upset and walked off. Story 20. I work in a camera store and do photography myself. I hear stories like this all the time. Usually people ask for model shoots in exchange for exposure, but I have heard and seen stories about people asking for full wedding shoots in exchange for exposure. There is a fairly popular one right now about a photographer in Chicago. It is not always influencers who ask. Sometimes rude people make these requests and then argue that if they had the equipment they could get the same results. They do not have respect for the time that goes into the art form. Story 21. I make documentary films. While in college I had a non-film job and met a woman, maybe 30 years old, who asked me to make an Instagram-style video. She showed me a professional video shoot done with a green screen, lights, and a set. I told her I could probably match that quality with my university's equipment, but it would take time to assemble a crew and reserve a studio. She insisted I should just record it with my phone. I pointed out that the video she showed me was not filmed on a phone, and she replied that because it was on Instagram it must have been. She stopped the request after I said I charge for my work and would not do it for free. She has about 10 followers, and 3 of them were porn bots. I have had 3,000 karma points for about 2 years, laughing my ass off. Story 22. I do photography on the side because I mainly work in film and video. A friend runs an Instagram account as a side business for fun. I offered to do a photo shoot for her if she helped me with my resume and cover letter. Although many companies send her products to review for free, the photo credit she gave me did not bring any followers to my Instagram. Anyone who hopes for exposure in exchange for work should know that it rarely leads to real exposure. I initiated the arrangement and would have done the shoot for free to get out of the house because she is a friend, but the photo credit made no difference in my experience. Story 23. If their influence were actually worth anything, they would be able to pay you. Story 24. I do street photography occasionally. Once I was offered influence credit if I pretended to be shocked to find her in the streets of my town. I would take a bunch of photos of her at the spot and give them to her while her boyfriend recorded. I was not allowed to use the photos myself, and all I would get was a tag at the end of the description. I declined, then snapped a couple of photos. She said she would sue me. I explained we were on a public street and I am a hobbyist who does not sell my work, so I do not need model release forms. I never heard from her again and I never used the photos. She is not interesting. Story 25. I'm not a photographer, but one of my acquaintances is a semi-popular influencer. She spends way too much time trying to seem authentic and down to earth. One time at a small party, I did something funny that made a bunch of people laugh. Whatever it was wasn't caught on camera, and she forced me to recreate the moment so she could film it for her Instagram stories. Apparently, you're not having fun unless you can prove it to your thousands of followers. Story 26. I paid my photographer for my album cover with cinnamon buns. He insisted that was his preferred payment. I have invented a new currency. I paid the photo editor the same way, although it was a mix of money and cinnamon buns. Story 27. Not an influencer necessarily, but a band. I have a close family friend from high school who plays in a local band. He usually gets me on the guest list whether I want to take pictures or not. I bring my camera every time just in case. I use the opening bands to dial in my settings and see what angles work for the stage, because they do not even know I will be there. Since I am there for my friend, I want anything I give him to be some of my better work. Sometimes, if the other bands notice me walking around and taking pictures during their set, they will come find me after the show and ask for some of the pictures. If I manage to get any that look decent, I never have a problem sending copies for their social media pages. Some bands even offer a free t-shirt, hat, or vinyl of their newest release, which I always appreciate. For any photo that has not been purchased and was done for exposure, I place my watermark on the lower right corner after editing. It is not obtrusive. It is tasteful, and it ensures people know who took the photo. Sometimes bands forget my name or forget to tag me. No big deal, humans make mistakes. After one concert in early 2019, the lead singer of an opening band I had never heard of approached me and said she had seen me taking pictures during their set and asked if I would send the photos for their Instagram. I said no problem and asked for a few days to import, edit, and email everything. She said they were on tour and short on money but would be happy to give me a shout out and direct bands in the area to contact me for concert photography. I said that was fine. I already had free admission through another band, and this is more of a hobby than a job. We went our separate ways. About a week later, I checked their Instagram to see if they had posted anything from that show. They had, but they had not tagged me and had cropped out my watermark. So much for the exposure. I reached out on Instagram and commented on the post from my photography profile, politely asking them to add my tag since it was my photograph and my edit. They blocked my photography profile. When I checked the band page from my personal account, the picture was still posted and they had not deleted my comment, in which I had said I was sure it was an honest mistake and I would appreciate credit for the photos I had sent with nothing promised but a shout out. Some people's kids, man. Story 28. I am a train conductor, about to board a parked train to take it to its destination. The locomotives were under a 200-yard-long overpass tunnel on private property. There were two women in their early 20s under the tunnel taking pictures. I asked them to leave, but they were annoyed and said I was ruining their photo shoot. The engineer and I were ready to depart. He joked that I should try to get a phone number, and I declined. I then reached over and sounded the horn for a full minute, and the two trespassers ran away screaming. Train horns are extremely loud, and the overpass amplified the sound. Taking photos on railroad property is dangerous and not worth risking injury or putting train crews in a position where they may be held responsible for your safety. Story 29. I love ridiculous requests because I create surrealist neon work in my spare time and enjoy aiming for weird, unusual vibes. One of the funniest shoots involved a woman who came to my house. I have a mini jungle and we shot with my plants. We wrapped her in vines, covered her guitar, stacked plants behind her, and made it look as if she was being enveloped by greenery. The results were fun and it was hilarious to shoot. Story 30. Story time. An influencer I did not know officially requested a photo shoot. I photographed them for about an hour, edited the images they wanted, and presented the final prints. They grabbed the prints, said thanks, and tried to leave. I held on to the prints and asked what they were doing. They said it was a privilege for me to photograph them and that I should cherish the publicity I would get. I wasn't having it. I refused to let them have the prints unless they paid, and said I would sell them myself otherwise. They freaked out and claimed I could not sell the photos because they had not given permission and that it would be creepy. They also demanded I remove my watermark because it was distracting. I informed them they had signed an agreement stating they would pay for the services and only own the prints they purchased. All photos remain my property for portfolio use. Unpurchased photos are subject to monetization unless the customer checks a box stating otherwise. There was no fine print or trickery, just 2 paragraphs explaining everything. They had signed the agreement before the photo shoot date. I also told them I would not remove my watermark from photos I took with my camera for my business. They threatened to sue, accusing me of being a pedophile and of illegally selling photos of them without permission. I told them to do as they pleased and that all I needed to do was present the signed agreement. They grabbed their copy of the agreement and tore it up while laughing. I stayed calm and explained that the torn paper was only their copy. The agreement signing date and the photo shoot date are separate so I can prepare the studio, make copies for my records, send a copy to my lawyer and manager, and prepare any filters. I told them I could print another copy. I also explained that the building security cameras and my camera, which was tethered to my computer, would show the entire photo shoot was headshots of a 28-year-old and that the camera had been on a tripod preset hours before the shoot. It would have been impossible for inappropriate pictures to be taken without being recorded. This is a real threat to any photographer, and I am not foolish. They became completely puzzled and angry, then handed me their debit card and paid for all the pictures they wanted. I asked if they wanted to sign a written request to remove monetization rights for their photos. They agreed and signed. I made copies in front of them, handed them their copy with a big grin, and wished them a good day. They stormed out angrily. I never saw them again. Story 31. I was asked to do a boudoir shoot in Toronto that would feature blood, bondage, and vampires, with people biting each other, by a very well-established producer on a children's show. Additional information. The producer was a woman. I did not do the shoot because I cannot have my name associated with shoots in that field, including nude, boudoir, bondage, dominance, submission, and masochism, as I work with global brands in the food, property, and portrait industries. The risk was too high for the pay, and that kind of work has never been my style, despite being asked many times to do these types of shoots as a female photographer. The show has been around since the mid-1990s and was extremely famous in its day. If you are American, there is a good chance you have seen at least one episode. I wish I could name it, but I have not been granted permission to do so by the producer for obvious reasons. Story 32. A related story that answers exactly what the original poster asked for. We were on a road trip and stopped at Tokati Falls in southern Oregon. The falls are at the end of a trail about a mile long. The trail leads to a vantage point about 40 to 50 feet above the falls. If you are a rock climber, you can probably scramble to the base of the falls, but it is a scary endeavor. The day we were there, we saw two influencer couples in the parking lot. We noticed them because the women stripped down to skimpy bikinis in the parking lot and they had snorkeling gear. This is a popular spot on Instagram, and the parking lot was packed with kids and families. They started the hike at the same time as us and spent the whole hike planning poses and shots. When we reached the end of the trail, they realized that the cool shots on Instagram require scrambling 30 feet down a wet rock face to the bottom of the falls. The disappointment was palpable. The bickering while hiking back was even more entertaining. It still cracks me up to think about that day. Story 33. An influencer contacted my production company to shoot both a photo session and a promotional video. She sent me an estimate stating how much I would have to pay to do the work for her. I politely declined. Story 34. I'm a boudoir photographer and also a fashion-safe for work photographer. Several years ago, I was asked to photograph a spiritual group self-masturbation event. At the time, I was too new to boudoir and erotic photography to go through with it. Honestly, if it were today, I would have done it and blogged about it. Story 35. I'm not a photographer, but I recently returned from the Dominican Republic. While there, a woman spent roughly 40 minutes on a paddleboard in the ocean striking new poses for what I assume was her Instagram. The time invested in being artificially genuine is sickening. Story 36. I shoot concerts frequently as a hobby. I usually offer artists some photos in exchange for a press pass and tell them they can do anything with the images except print or sell them. 90% of the time people have zero issues with that and agree happily. One exception was rapper Made in Tokyo. He asked me to pay him a $300 photography fee to shoot his concert, even though he would be able to use the images however he wanted. I said no thanks and stopped messaging him. He messaged me twice more asking for $200 and then $100 before I blocked him on social media. Story 37. While not Instagram, I did a photo shoot and videography for a laser and fireworks show with a great band. The shoot was for a friend's company. I did not discuss price beforehand because I assumed they knew how much I typically charge. I thought I would get more than usual since I also helped set up $15,000 worth of fireworks and assisted with teardown. They then expected me to pay myself by skimming money from the venue's parking. Needless to say, we are not friends anymore. Story 38. Years ago, I did many promotional burlesque portraits. I was a nobody in the industry, but I was lucky to connect with amazing performers who were a treat to work with and had access to high-end costumes and styling that elevated the shots. As burlesque was popular in my country at the time, I received many requests for similar photos. Regular clients who wanted portraits for themselves, since I had plenty of props and outfits and enjoyed helping women feel good in their skin, and aspiring starlets who wanted me to photograph their acts. The aspiring starlets were the most entitled. They acted as if they were doing me a favor by letting me photograph their very basic outfits: store-bought legs, Avenue lingerie, party wigs, and fake ostrich fans. while demanding that I provide a high-end production at my own expense, including makeup, hair, and set styling, plus dozens of edited high-resolution images. They expected all of this free of charge under the usual trade-for-print excuse, even though they intended to use the images to promote themselves, which is commercial use. It became so bad that I spent more time explaining why I would not shoot someone than organizing actual shoots, so I removed myself from the dialogue. I created a lighthearted graphic test titled "Find Out If You Have the Right Requirements for Trade for Print" that covered practically everything and sent it to people likely to waste my time. It eliminated the need to write dozens of polite messages explaining information already on my website and social media, and nearly no one persisted after receiving it. I no longer use it because I now do very few commission jobs, but writing this made me go look for it. Keep in mind, this was more than 10 years ago, which is why I used Facebook rather than Instagram. Story 39. I am just happy to see the word influencer in quotes where it belongs, as these jabronis do nothing of the sort. Story 40. I cannot pay you, but think about all the great publicity. Story 41. I am a model, and another model who was known from a modeling television show asked me to shoot with her for a sunglasses company for exposure and fun. Exposure does not pay my bills. It was a big brand, and they did not have a budget. When I declined, she immediately unfollowed me everywhere. Story 42. My ex convinced me for days to do a photo shoot of her friend, whom I had met only once before. Apparently, she had a big break in modeling and needed a professional photo shoot as soon as possible. Wanting to be nice to both of them, I agreed. I was happy to help. It was big news. I scouted locations and researched new techniques to get the best out of my basic camera equipment. I drove her and my ex to a nearby national park, paid for fuel, and bought food and props, all at my expense. I took some great shots and spent hours post-processing them to make them portfolio-worthy. I sent the low-resolution photos by email because she was impatient, but I told her to wait until the final touches were done and that I would send a link to a drive with the high-resolution final photos. She immediately uploaded the low-resolution photos to Facebook and Instagram with a pseudo-intellectual caption, without crediting me. 2 days later, I sent the final images, hoping she had not shared the low-resolution ones with the agency, but she did not acknowledge my email. That's when I realized what was going on. She wanted new social media profile pictures. Story 43. We were naked because of the influencer's ego. I was young, so I took part. I would be more cautious now because she was not as responsible as I would have preferred with those photos. Story 44. I had the girlfriend of a D-list celebrity ask me to take cheesy couples photographs of them. I am a fashion and editorial photographer, not a family portrait photographer. She said he was in the film Moonlight and that he is very successful. When I replied with my prices, she argued with me in 4 emails that it would be great for me to do it for free. I told her to find someone else. If he is very successful, he can pay me $200. Another local photographer did it for free, and neither she nor the photos received any exposure from it. Thomas Middleditch did ask me to take his photo a couple of years ago, which I regret missing because I was across the country at the time. That would have been worthwhile exposure. Story 45. An influencer with just over 1,000 followers thought I should be paying her $150 per hour because of all the positive exposure and business I will get from her sharing my work. I declined. Story 46. This is not a direct response to the question, but whenever we receive an invitation to a celebration, such as an 18th birthday, a 21st birthday, or an engagement, my wife is often asked whether I will be bringing my camera. Story 47. We went out west hiking. We were packing to leave on a 17-mile hike in the hot sun. My friend stopped and said, "Wait, I forgot my flex gear for Instagram." He ran back to the tent and jammed about half of his clothes into his hiking backpack. Fast forward to midday, when he realized he had taken the camera out of his bag to fit more clothes. Rest in peace. Story 48. I made a wedding video for a client, and the mother of the bride insisted that her poor quality vertical cell phone footage of the father-daughter dance be included in the final video. Story 49. I had one woman message me who wanted images taken. She did not go into much detail about what she wanted, but she was keen to talk about her history. She had been a Brazilian movie star and was quite popular in South America in the 1980s. I did some research and she certainly did not look as good now as she did then. I pushed for more details, and it turned out she wanted explicit photos because she had started a career as an international escort and was touring my country. She wanted material to sell to her fans and to display on her profiles to find more sex work. I politely declined. I also had a woman in Newcastle, Australia, ask if I could take nude photos of her and two female friends. Unfortunately for me, I live in Newcastle, England. Story 50. An influencer once sent me a direct message on Instagram asking me to travel to the United States for a shoot. I replied, "Sounds like fun. Send me some details." She said, "Sure. You fly here, pay for your flights, obviously. Book a hotel, hire a car, and pick me up. I want to do my shoot at the Grand Canyon." I asked, "How do you see me making money from this?" She answered, "I will share the pictures so you get followers, and I will promote your profile for a week." I replied, "That does not help me make money. You could either pay for my flights and hotel and so on and pay me a wage." She responded, "Why the fuck would I pay some blameless photographer to come out here and take pictures of me? I am not some wannabe. Do you even know who I am?" For the record, she had fewer than 2,000 followers. I had just over 5,000 legitimate followers. Story 51. A friend who owns a popular bar posts a discreet sign stating a $100 surcharge for customers who identify as social media influencers and ask for complimentary items. He charges the fee when customers ask him to comp the bill because they plan to mention him. So far, he has not received any chargebacks from credit card companies. He has applied the fee only a few times, typically to particularly obnoxious customers. Story 52. A friend of a friend's girlfriend started pestering me because she learned I had taken a photography class at university. Despite my warning that I was not a model photographer and had only a slightly better than average camera, she kept at it, so one day I agreed. She dragged me downtown, found a few spots with good street art, and I took a few shots. The problem came when I sent her the pictures. She blasted me on social media, calling the pictures worthless, saying she looked ugly, and accusing me of wasting her time. I simply replied that my course had been titled Crime Scene and Evidence Photography, where I was trained not to embellish the subject but to capture people as they really are. Story 53. I have a friend who bought a private jet at auction in Los Angeles a little over 5 years ago for about 1/15 of the sticker price. He is a mechanic who did very well with investments and figured it would be a fun project. Immediately after he bought it, however, financial issues came up and he had to put the project on the back burner. Rather than restoring it to working order, he remodeled the interior to look essentially like a brand new jet. About 3 years ago, after receiving repeated requests for photo shoots when people learned he owned a jet, he started charging people to take pictures on and beside it. He charges $1,500 per hour for access to his private jet, and it has not left the runway since he bought it 5 years ago. He receives reliable bookings 2 to 3 times a week. These customers bring fake alcohol bottles and fake food, have their friends dress up as cabin crew, pilots, and massage therapists, and post it all as if they are living a jet-setting lifestyle. It is funny but also really sad. He calls it one of the best investments he has ever made and has discussed turning it into a scaled business. Story 54. Not for an influencer, but my boyfriend's mother is a photographer. She was sent 2 photos and asked to edit one. The first photo showed a young man with his grandmother in front of a memorial. The second photo showed the same young man alone a few years later at the same memorial. The family asked the photographer to digitally add a ghostly version of the grandmother next to the young man because she had since passed away. Very odd. Story 55. I did a mermaid photo shoot once. I was invited to Lake Tahoe with some friends and they asked if I could do a mermaid photo shoot. I told them my rates and they said it was fine. I gave them a huge discount and provided the materials: a mermaid tail, fake jewels, and a treasure chest. I told her she would need to pick out a top she wanted, whether seashells or scales or whatever. I paid for my own lodging and contributed toward food. First, I taught a 1-hour lesson on some synchronized swimming moves and how to swim with a mermaid tail. I did about a 4-hour photo shoot where I provided the tail. She had a few friends there, and I had to work around them as they snapped pictures with their phones. She wasn't cooperative with the shoot, but it didn't bother me. We went in the water. I told her it was going to be cold, but we only needed about half an hour. After the shoot, she asked if I could get the photos to her social media right then and there. I said I could work on them that night, but I would need at least 4 hours to touch them up. She said okay, so I worked that night while they went to a concert, had them ready, and showed them to her. She loved them and asked if I could send them to her. I asked for payment of $100. She was shocked and said that her friends weren't charging and, besides, you can keep them for yourself, and winked at me. One of her better friends told her off, said it was a lot of work, and paid me $50 more than I had asked. She asked if I could do the same for her. That shoot went a lot better. I ended up giving her 2 large framed prints for her birthday present. Story 56. I am not a professional, but I bought a high-end camera to get into photography. Now all my cousins and other family members expect me to take photos at every family gathering, so I refuse to bring my camera to events anymore. I own a Sony a6000 if you were wondering. Story 57. I did a shoot with a woman. It was supposed to be a typical collaboration. Once we met, she bossed me around, would not listen to my suggestions, and spoke to me as if I were her employee. After the shoot, she demanded that I send the hundreds of raw photos so she could edit them herself and that I should not post any so they would appear to be taken by her. I sent her 3 pictures and deleted the rest. I never spoke to her again. Some models can be difficult. Story 58. I don't know if she was an influencer, but it was a crazy photography request. A couple wanted me to do a nude photo shoot for them on the cheap. I refused because I don't shoot nudes. I said so, but she insisted, trying to coax me and saying we would have to do it at my studio because they couldn't at their place. I told her I didn't have a studio. She suggested my bedroom would be fine, that we could hang sheets and decorate it for the shoot. 18 levels of hell. No, you weirdo. Story 59. I am not an influencer, but I work in music and film. For a while, I was trying to build my portfolio with some new sexy fashion photos. A photographer offered to shoot me for free and invited me to an all-day shoot where models cycled in and out of the studio for a few hours. It turned out to be at a friend of a friend's home in Brooklyn. Although there was a photography setup and several models and stylists, the photographer was clearly a creep. A few days later, the same photographer invited me to an industry meetup with a bunch of photographers and agents at a bar and restaurant in Midtown. I arrived ready to mingle, and it turned out to be just the photographer, his 2 friends who appeared to be on drugs, and one other model who left quickly. I sent an urgent message to a friend who was supposed to meet me later to rescue me. While I waited, the photographer told me he loved my photos, said I was the same age as his daughter, and tried to kiss me several times. A few minutes later, my friend arrived, pretended to be my boyfriend, and we left. In summary, the photographer expected me to perform oral sex. I would call that an outrageous request. Story 60. I own a wedding photography and videography company in Florida. A couple who are famous on YouTube contacted us about their wedding and demanded all of the unedited images and raw video, plus the copyrights, so they could edit the material themselves for their YouTube channel. We would be willing to provide that for the correct price. Copyrights for 800 to 1,500 images and 12 or more hours of video typically cost tens of thousands of dollars. They offered to pay less than half our regular coverage price for everything, which we declined. When we told them we would not accommodate their request, the bride had her mother call me and yell that we had ruined their wedding. Story 61. I am not a photographer, but I recently went on an ocean kayaking tour in Thailand. One large boat took a group of people to see some islands. We were separated into pairs, each with a private kayak guide. One European couple, maybe in their early 30s, were dressed in attractive swimwear. That is normal. It was a beautiful view, so you would want good photos. We stopped 3 or 4 times, and each time their guide went out of his way to fulfill their photo requests. He stepped precariously onto sharp ocean rocks with 1 foot in the kayak so the kayak would not float away while he framed their full bodies with the background. At the last destination, a secluded small beach, what floored me was that the woman was on the very rocky sand by herself. striking suggestive poses while the kayak guide took photographs for her. Her partner sat in the kayak looking at his phone. She was the only person from our group of 12 who went onto the beach because it looked painful to walk on. I do not think they tipped him. Story 62. She came to me and wanted $200 per hour for 3 hours of work, but also wanted full rights to the photos, which would prevent me from selling or displaying them. She essentially wanted to use me as an automated teller machine and have me pay for the pleasure of working with her. Absolutely not. While I have paid $200 per hour for a model, I obtained full rights and 99% of models agree. Story 63. Influencers are the new mommy bloggers. Vacuous nonsense mainly harnessed by clickbait advertisers. They are the bane of the internet. Story 64. Before influencing became popular, I was listening to an artist I liked on Spotify and saw on her Facebook that she was looking for someone to make a music video. I decided to volunteer because I was job hunting and thought it would be fun. We completely hashed something together in a Costa coffee shop and made a stop-motion animation of the artist walking through the streets. It was a great day. I managed to find the video for those interested. I am not the bald man in the video. I have no idea who he is. I think she added him in post-production. Story 65. I was at a private event. The Instagram user actually had a camera operator shooting video. 2 hours into the event, one of the celebrities noticed the videographer and spoke with security. Security told the videographer to stop filming and to destroy any footage already recorded. She refused and began yelling and making a scene. Another very large celebrity, who did not like his party being disrupted, grabbed the video camera, smashed it, removed the memory card, and his private bodyguards escorted her away. She later posted an exposé in which she criticized the celebrities who were there and threatened the venue with retaliation. This resulted in her account being banned from both Instagram and Facebook. The Instagram influencer lost more than 25,000 followers. I cannot name names or I will not be allowed to attend these events anymore. Story 66. It's not outrageous, but I see where I can push the boundaries and see if they are willing to give anything in return, be it money or food, because I will not work for free when I am asked. I once had a laugh. A cheap bastard of a model wanted a shoot for free. I decided I am a broke university student and I am light on work this month. So I said, sort me out a large Big Mac meal and I will do it. My usual rates are $200 to $300 for a half day and $500 for a full day, plus extra costs, so a Big Mac is nothing. The model tried to barter and asked why I could not do it for free. The guy owned a nice 2017 Range Rover and complained at the idea of paying me with a Big Mac. Another time I posted reduced portfolio shoot rates. I rarely do reduced rates, so I felt generous. I got a message from a model saying what I was offering was not enough. I had to tell the model that these are the rates. My final favorite. A model wanted me to shoot images of her for her OnlyFans in return for payment in a month and free access. I swiftly declined and told her, politely, to go away. Story 67. I sometimes work as a freelance copywriter. I once considered a gig writing funny, clever captions for someone's Instagram. It looked like a typical Instagram influencer account with a decent number of followers. They were offering to pay not much but enough to interest me, and it seemed like a fun job. They sent over some pictures, and they were just a bunch of unsolicited explicit photos. I think the Instagram account was not the person I had been talking to. It was a catfish who tricked me into viewing explicit images. I stopped looking for freelance jobs on Craigslist after that. Story 68. I am a ceramicist and use Instagram as my main channel for selling and promoting my work. I often get influencers asking me to send them items so they can show them on their profiles. Most recently, and bizarrely, an Instagram account featuring a bunny contacted me wanting to promote my work. I have about 15,000 more followers than that account, so even if I wanted to, it would not be worth it for me. I dislike influencer culture, but even if I accepted it, this account does not come close to having enough followers to be considered an influencer. I looked at the bunny account and have no idea how it could possibly promote me. Every photo is just someone's pet rabbit doing various things, not at all ceramics related. 0 out of 10. I would not be influenced again. Story 69. I have a flagship digital single-lens reflex camera that I bought because I did not plan ahead. I paid for it by photographing powwows and doing light photography work, but I learned I hated editing on other people's timelines. I enjoy taking photos and can usually produce 3 to 4 amazing images out of the 500 I shoot, so I get requests all the time. Most of the time I do it for family or friends for free, but I charge friends of friends a small fee to motivate me. A distant cousin asked me to take their senior pictures. I had not interacted with them much, but I agreed to take a few if they paid for printing. I would post the images on my website for download or to share on social media. They became upset when they discovered I did not have a full studio, only a backpack with $10,000 of gear, and that I expected them to bring the clothes and props they wanted for the shoot. After rescheduling, we traveled to several iconic but difficult-to-reach locations. They changed into 4 outfits at each location, wasting a lot of available light. They refused to pose the way I wanted, saying it looked weird or that they were too far from the background because they did not understand how lenses work. After a long, terrible day, I packed up my camera and later forgot about the session. The next day, I received about 20 texts asking where the pictures were. The following day, there were about 100 messages and calls, including messages on Facebook and calls from their parents. I told them I had not edited the images yet but would do so the next weekend. That was not good enough, and they kept calling. After 4 days, they asked for the unedited photos, so I sent a link to the 40-gigabyte raw, unprocessed files. They complained the files were too large to download, that the images were all the same, and that they looked flat. Against my better judgment, I selected 8 to 12 images that I thought were the best and another 20 that I did not prefer but included because they were acceptable, if not my style. Immediately, they said this was too few because I had originally taken thousands. I like bokeh, and I have a Nikon 135mm f/2 defocus control lens that I use for portraits because it is excellent. I used it almost exclusively because the f/2 aperture, combined with my Nikon D4S camera, makes almost anything look good, especially at night. They complained that a perfectly focused bust portrait with a soft stone arch bridge in the background ruined the location. They also disliked how I lit them with reflected light, saying the blue and orange tones against a city street were gross. Either way, I am selling my gear because I do not want to use it anymore. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.